and welcome to Wednesday webinar. I'm Julia Hartman from the Bantax National Accountants Group, and today I'm coming to you from Rose Bay, which is in Bowen in northern Queensland. And I'd like to talk to you about the capital gains tax ramifications when you rent out your home before you move into it. Now this is a story, not just the usual warnings about the law. This is a real life scenario. A reader of one of the magazines I wrote for rang me and said that the ATO had come asking questions about a house that she'd sold 2 years earlier. That was her home, and she was horrified to find that they'd assessed her for capital gains tax on the difference between the price she paid for it and the price she sold it for. You can imagine, scary. The trouble was that when she first bought the property, there was a sitting tenant in the property at the time, so she let that tenant see out their lease of a few months, and she declared the rent and everything else in her tax return. So all this gets noted down with the tax office, and when the property is sold, the titles office tell the tax office, right, that property that you've had a little mark against, that's sold now, go get them. Trouble was, of course, when she sold her property and packed up to move out, she threw out everything she had to do with that property because she didn't own it anymore. She'd renovated, she'd spent a fortune on it. So of course the tax office was quite reasonable that it was only capital gains tax for part of the time she owned it, but still it was a huge gain because she'd renovated the place. Fortunately, the ATO in the end allowed her to estimate the cost of these renovations, and the law doesn't require receipts like the substantiation laws in relation to work-related expenses. It only requires you to keep a record, so I think you'd have a reasonable argument if you got a quantity surveyor in to estimate how much the renovations were, but you're going to have difficulty doing that because you no longer own the house. So it's something to tell everyone, warn them. The ideal situation is to simply delay settlement until the tenant's lease is expired. Demand vacant possession if you're going to live in the place as your home. Now, if the ATO really wanted to be nasty, there's actually a fine of several $1,000s for not having kept records. So she was quite lucky there. It's certainly something to be taken very seriously. And you might think the 6-year absent rule protects you. It doesn't. You've got to have lived in a house before you can cover it with your main residence exemption under the absence rule, as this place had a tenant in it when she bought it, won't cover it. Well, I hope that's useful, and please spread the word, warn your friends, and I hope to see you again next week.